Josh Taylor has beaten Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury to it. He has become Britain's first undisputed world champion since Lennox Lewis in 1999. He scored a unanimous 12-round points decision win over Jose Ramirez. Let's talk about it. Taylor started boxing on the outside in the early rounds. I gave him the first two. I thought that Ramirez was very cautious. He was stalking, but wasn't really throwing much. Taylor was flicking out jabs, throwing some speculative left hands, a few body shots here and there. Ramirez landed a couple body shots too, but I certainly gave Taylor the first couple rounds. Ramirez then came on strong in the third. I thought Taylor took the fourth. And in the mid rounds, it looked as though Ramirez was building up a head of steam. It looked like Taylor might face some very tough times at the back end of the fight, the way it was going. But then Taylor scored a very good knockdown in the sixth round. It was a left hand as Ramirez was coming in at the beginning of the round, actually. You can see there, Ramirez down in round 6 and 7. It was the beginning of the sixth round. Left hand caught Ramirez coming in. Ramirez wasn't massively hurt by it, but he definitely felt the shot. And that obviously goes down as a 10-8 round for Josh Taylor. Then in the seventh round, Ramirez was hurt far more by the next knockdown, which was an uppercut on the inside by Taylor. Beautiful shot, the way he managed to find the space for it and sneak it in there. Ramirez went down more heavily and was definitely a lot more affected. When he got up, Taylor went in there trying to get Ramirez out of there, but Ramirez was quite wily and his survival instincts were quite good. He managed to survive the round. From there on in, Josh Taylor was really in the driving seat, at least from my perspective. He did take some rounds off here and there, but Ramirez didn't really do much to steal the rounds off Taylor, at least some of the rounds which Taylor took off. So I personally had Taylor in a commanded lead all the way through to the end of the bout. The judges, however, saw it quite differently. Well, make it out what you will. In the eyes of the judges, it was the two knockdowns that won Josh Taylor this fight. And I want to give a shout out to Teddy Atlas, actually, not that he watches my videos, but he predicted Ramirez would win this fight on a controversial, I think he said possibly controversial 12-round split decision. He said that Top Rank and just the boxing establishment over there in America would have preferred Ramirez to win. And looking at the judges' scorecards, he was probably right about that. They probably would have preferred Ramirez to win. But Taylor sealed the deal with those knockdowns and made it impossible or very, very difficult for the judges to cross that line and actually go ahead and give it to Ramirez. One of the tactics which was so effective for Josh Taylor in this fight was the clinch. Now, some may say that it was borderline excessive at times, but it was very clever stuff because he would, being the more prolific guy at long range, get a shot off at long range, then he would immediately fall in and prevent Jose Ramirez from countering with anything. And he did that throughout the course of the bout. Ramirez was still able to get shots off at certain times, of course, but that was a good defensive strategy by Josh Taylor. Throw your shot, fall in, prevent the guy who prefers fighting up close from countering you with anything. Also, another defensive move which Josh Taylor utilized in this fight was to dip to his own left underneath Ramirez's hooks. This is something we saw Billy Joe Saunders do against Canelo Alvarez, and ironically, it actually cost Billy Joe Saunders because as he was dipping, he walked right into a Canelo Alvarez uppercut, and that ended the fight, obviously. But for Josh Taylor here, he was in against a good fighter, but no Canelo Alvarez, a guy who wasn't able to time those dips and hit him in the eye with an uppercut. So it was an effective defensive move for Josh Taylor on the inside when he wasn't able to smother Ramirez or move away using his legs or block his shots. He was able to dip to his left underneath Ramirez's punches. And Taylor's footwork was also very good in this fight. I liked the way he was able to spin out of the pocket. There were instances where Ramirez tried to trap him against the ropes or in the corners. And even when they were in exchanges, Taylor would exchange and then he would glide. That's the best way I can describe it. Glide out of the pocket to his right really smoothly, almost like a ballroom dancer, right? So really nice footwork from Josh Taylor at many points in this fight. Josh Taylor was pawing with his jab quite a lot in this fight. And some people look at that and they say, why is he pawing with the jab? He should be snapping it out like a ramrod jab. Well, in certain instances with certain fighters, they paw with their jab because they're uncertain, they're not sure, they're not confident. But when you're dealing with somebody like a Josh Taylor, he's pawing with his jab because he's trying to set something up. When you have a guy like Ramirez who has a very tight guard a lot of the time, throwing real hard jabs, you're going to be hitting gloves. He's just going to tighten that defense up when the jab comes and you're not going to do any damage with it. So what Josh Taylor was doing, rather than wasting energy on throwing real heavy jabs all the time, he was just flicking jabs out there to try and trigger Ramirez into throwing something. And those kind of jabs are used for multiple reasons, but one of them is to try and trigger your opponent into throwing something. You're also trying to blind your opponent to the left, all right, the backhand, and you're also measuring the range, the distance. So it's doing multiple different things at the same time. But in this fight, it was particularly used as a way of trying to trigger Jose Ramirez to do something. And then once he did something, Josh Taylor was trying to walk him into a big left hand. And it worked very well on several occasions, with the knockdown especially. The first knockdown, that is. Josh Taylor's always been a good all-round boxer. You know, he can fight on the outside, he can fight on the inside. He's shown a good chin so far in his career. He's tenacious, he's very determined. He's got decent power there, good hand speed, good balance. Just a very well-rounded fighter. And that, for me, was ultimately the difference. Ramirez was picking his spots quite well and he was quite sneaky. He would maneuver Josh Taylor into certain positions, particularly against the ropes, before he would unleash. So he was quite economical with his shots, particularly early in the fight. But as I say, the knockdowns changed that and made Ramirez a lot more hesitant, particularly in the couple rounds that followed the knockdown rounds. And that really sealed the deal for Josh Taylor. This was a fantastic achievement by Josh Taylor for a British fighter in the United States to go over there and become undisputed in a way that he has. And of course, he's had fantastic wins in the UK as well. But this really is the crown jewel so far for Josh Taylor. The Prograis fight was a lot harder than this for him. But I'm talking about in terms of on paper achievements, going away from home and becoming an undisputed fight on American soil. Fantastic. So where does he go from here? That's the question a lot of people are going to be asking, because once you become undisputed, what else is there for you to do? I mean, you can stay in the one weight division, Marvin Hagler style, and just defend your titles for however long you want. But it's this, it's the trend these days in the modern era of boxing to try and become a multi-weight world champion rather than pitching your tent at one weight division, staying there to go up through the divisions. Golovkin, of course, has bucked that trend. He's decided to stay in one weight class so far for his entire career, although he's never been undisputed. Will Josh Taylor do that, or will he move up? I suspect Josh Taylor's going to want to move up. He's a big guy at the weight, 5'10". He's talked about fighting Terence Crawford, and that's, of course, a pretty easy fight to make since they're both with Top Rank, both on ESPN. It's a natural fight to make. Terence Crawford's been looking for big-time opponents. He's been frozen out by PBC. So Josh Taylor moves up. That's a very credible opponent for Terence Crawford. And I'm sure Terence Crawford will fancy the job. He'll probably think of Ricky Burns and, oh yeah, I know these Scottish fighters. I went over there and bashed one up in Ricky Burns back in the days. Josh Taylor, of course, is no Ricky Burns. He's much better than that. No disrespect to Ricky. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, where Josh Taylor should go from here. Should he stay at 140 pounds? There's even been people like Gervonta Davis talking about fighting Josh Taylor in the not too distant past. What do you think about that fight? Is that something you guys would like to see? Or would you prefer him to move up and face Bud at 147? And in terms of the pound for pound, because people are talking about pound for pound rankings now, I'm not someone that really gets into pound for pound because it's such an abstract concept and you have to take so many different things into consideration. I'm not really into the whole pound for pound thing in terms of making top 10 lists. I'll leave that to you guys. And before I go, I of course want to big up Josh Taylor, not only for his fantastic achievement in becoming the undisputed world super lightweight champion and all he's achieved in his career so far, but for also being a man, having the ability to think critically and standing up at a crucial time and speaking out against the collective hysteria, the collective naivety, and the collective cowardice which has befallen humanity. So big up Josh Taylor for that. And actually, I want to leave you guys with a video recommendation. It's called Dr. John Lee Unlocked. Check that video out. Big up Josh Taylor. Catch you on the next video.